how many of you have heard of the phrase sex sells? Okay, that's not true. So how many of you would watch a show, buy a magazine, read a book because there's sex in it or sexually explicit material?
Honestly?
All of us.
Okay, so that's 3 out of the whole room. So before, you hear that sex sells, but it does not sell to every person. So one of the major problems that we're having in our media, and a lot of even education, just everyday life, is the over-sexual objectification of people, whether it's women, men, and just putting too much sex everywhere. So I'm going to go through where we find it and what it means to be sexually objectified, what it does to people, what are the effects that it has on our society, and then how are we going to fix that. So we find it literally everywhere. So Donald Trump is a fantastic example of how we find it everywhere in our country, but I have taken a stance against him. Like, I don't have a problem with him saying that, because it just shows that our society does deem it as locker room talk. It is normal. So everybody else will do it, but then as soon as someone who is in a political office does it, now they have a problem with it. But those same people who were critiquing him are the people who act the same way, and definitely are, they're being hypocrites about it. So I mean, we see it in our own presidential election. Who now our new president is a key example of how sex is just too much. It's everywhere, and it's a big factor in the way that people live their lives. And then we also see it with magazines. I can't even tell you how many magazines. What's on the front cover? It's a half-naked girl, some guy that's got oil, 8-pack abs going on, something like that. But it really doesn't make people want to buy it. It's there because the advertisers think that sex is going to sell, but statistics show that it actually does not promote sales any more than a normal advertisement. And so what it ends up doing is it causes problems for parents, causes problems for our youth, causes problems especially for women more than men, but it also causes problems for men as well, as far as your physical health and your mental health. So when children see this, and I know some of you have kids, how would you like to explain why there's a girl eating a cheeseburger in a bikini and has cream all over her face, and your daughter's like, what does that mean? Like, why is that like that? Like, why? Who wants to explain that to, their 10-year-old daughter, the purpose of that advertisement? Because I can tell you, I certainly would not want to. So now you're teaching our kids that this is okay. And I was a mother's helper for a mother with 6 kids. And her kids were young, and they went to a private school, and it was a good private school for arts and science and everything. And she was so worried about her boys growing up and seeing, because there was these kids going down the camera with cameras, filming like girls walking the opposite direction, and they were part of the yearbook staff. And she was like, I don't want my kids exposed to this kind of stuff, especially at a young age. So all we're doing is training our youth to become accustomed to that and become a part of it, which is why Donald Trump is a great example of what happens whenever we allow that to shape our society and become such a prevalent part of it. And you know that it's in so many movies and TV shows. PG-13 can now have nudity in it as long as it's women's nudity. Rated R is men's. So women are over-sexually objectified more than men are. So it goes on to how it creates problems for women. Women, when they're sexually objectified, they're seen as parts, not a whole. And they did a study on it, and they had a group of people look at pictures. And then what they did was they took different body parts, like cropped the pictures out, and asked them which ones they recognized from a group of photos that they had showed them previously. And the ones that they recognized were the cropped in pictures of like women's breasts. They didn't recognize the feet. They didn't recognize like the man's like shoulders. It was always the parts that were deemed sexual, that separated a woman into parts instead of a whole. So what that does to women and men is it creates, and this is especially in pornography. I did extensive research on the effects of pornography in our society and relationships. So whenever women see this, they're broken down into parts. It eliminates our self-worth, and then we are valued less in society, which is why a feminist movement is like a big, massive movement going on right now, and that's one of the big points of that. And so it causes us to body shame, and we have come to a point where we are body shaming each other, which is the worst thing you can possibly do. Men body shame us. We are profiled, and models have to be 105 pounds, 5'8" or taller. You are expected to fit within these stipulations because of the way that our media projects what the ideal body image is, and it typically is sexual. And then, so this can lead to mental health problems like depression. It can cause things like anorexia, binge eating disorder, and all of those because people try to fit into these stereotypes. Men have the same problem. That's whenever you get into the overusage of steroids, when guys will go to the gym for like 4 hours a day and just really bulk up because they're trying to be this picture. And not all of them and not all women, but it affects more of our society than it should. So we have the effect on children, which is awful, and then women and men. But then with women and men having these problems, they go into relationships and marriages. So what ends up happening with that is it creates a wandering eye for society, because then you want what's portrayed in the media, not what you have. So it creates infidelity, which then increases divorce rates. So more people, especially with pornography, there's been a lot of divorces that were linked to that, and a lot of people that would commit infidelity because of what they're seeing, and that's what they want, that their spouse isn't giving them, and then it creates insecurities within the relationship, and then eventually leads to a divorce. So it's actually a very, very concerning thing. So just a simple advertisement of a girl eating a cheeseburger has now caused divorces. Like, it's really becoming a massive issue amongst our society. So what we can do to help it is boycott. It's like the most simple historical thing that we can do. Not buy the magazines, not watch the TV shows, don't buy 50 Shades of Grey. Do what you have to do, because eventually the most important part is protecting our children. So we're already screwed, but our kids don't have to be. So we need to shape our world to where it's going to be better for them. They're growing up where Donald Trump said very, very explicit things. Granted, it was 10 years ago, but it's on the media now, and they're presenting that to our children, and that's what our children are seeing. And our children are asking questions, and then they're growing up to be the same exact way, and they're profiling the same way. They're creating the same double standards and living a life that we have shown them that is not right. So we just need to make sure we speak out about it, and not participate in using these items or buying them or watching them. Make sure that we stand up and we're like, no, this is not what we want, and make sure our kids know so that way they do not continue the same behavior.